Hi there, my name is Martin Luco and I'm a Customer Success Manager at Silico. Silico is a new business simulation platform that helps you create a digital twin of your enterprise so that you can monitor your business, forecast the future outcomes and test decisions virtually before taking them in the real world. A critical part to your company's margins are raw material and commodity prices, and especially gas has been incredibly volatile and rising throughout the year. With winter ahead of us, these problems are not just going to get worse, but there might even be restrictions on the availability of gas. Therefore, German companies that use gas as a raw material or to produce energy have been devising strategies to A, mitigate the higher gas prices, but B, also to devise strategies so that they can continue production if supply of gas is restricted. We've created a concept model to test their strategies, which we're going to have a look at in this short video. What we're seeing on the screen here is an overview of the model we've created. We're considering that a company has a reserve or a stockpile of gas that is depleted by using that gas as a source of energy and as a component to make your products as a raw material, but also that there is a resupply of gas every day. We're considering a gas price and how many units this hypothetical company wants to make of their product. And then there's two uses of gas. One is gas as a raw material, particularly, for example, in the chemical industry, where some companies might have the ability to substitute gas for alternative raw materials that might potentially be more expensive. Those companies essentially need to make a decision about what percentage or how many of the desired production is made with gas compared to other materials, but there might also be some companies who can't substitute gas with other materials. And the second use of gas is as part of an energy mix, for example, to provide electricity for factories or to create heat. And here we're assuming all companies can substitute gas with alternative but potentially more expensive energy sources. So there's just a decision of what's the percentage of gas in our company's energy mix. But then there's also a second choice about companies of what we've learned in the article, essentially trying to become more energy efficient and cutting out electricity and heat where it's not required. And then we've got a profit and loss on the right here where we're just collecting the daily and cumulative energy costs, material costs, some total costs, and we're making some assumption of a unit price just to calculate a revenue figure on a daily and cumulative basis so that we also have a daily and cumulative profit. And these are the outcomes we're going to have a look at in a second on our interactive dashboards. What you see on the screen now is one of these interactive dashboards, where on the left here we're visualizing how much gas we get in supplies every day, how much we're using every day, and what net change that results into for our reserve. We got that gas reserve, which hits zero about mid-February. We've got our actual and desired production here, which are the same line for now. And then we've got our daily revenue, energy costs, material costs, and profit, as well as those same outcomes as a cumulative variable. And what we learned from the article is that German companies are looking into making three sorts of changes to cope with higher gas prices and the possibility of a gas shortage. And the first one is that if they can substitute gas in their production processes for other raw materials, they might want to dial down the percentage of units that are produced with gas. And we can do exactly that with this slider here. We've got the percentage. Currently 100 means we're producing everything using gas as a raw material, but we might want to dial that down. And what you then see is, let's have a look at our cumulative profit down here, and we'll start that decreasing as we decrease the percentage of gas. And that's because the substitute material in the specific example are so high. So we want to increase that to 100% again. But we might want to think about, okay, if one of the issues is as soon as our gas reserve here hits zero, that means we must be starting to substitute there. So actually we probably want to make sure that we're saving as much gas for production rather than, for example, electricity. So one thing we can look at is, what if we become more energy efficient, for example, achieve a 30% energy efficiency increase, and then we can see our profit increases slightly from 12.8 to about 13.16 million. And similarly, we can think about, okay, how quickly are we able to implement these changes? And here it's 90 days, but we can also drop that down to probably about 60 days, and then it increases further, or maybe even 30 days, in which we can achieve that 30% energy efficiency improvement. But that still leaves some improvement to do because we've pushed our energy shortage into about beginning of March rather than mid-February. So what we might want to do is, if we currently have an energy mix of 75% of gas for our factory, we might want to dial that down. And then we can see our profit increases because we can actually now use that gas for our production process rather than just burning it for electricity and heat. Another aspect we can look at is what if companies can't substitute gas for other raw materials? And for that, we've set up a different scenario here, and we can already see what the issue is if we run out of gas in such a company. What we have is our gas supply might hit zero, and that suddenly causes a drop in production, so we're not producing at our desired production rate anymore, but rather we have idle capacity because we only have our limited gas supply per day, and that's insufficient to cover our whole production. So for those companies, it becomes even more important that they reduce the gas they use for electricity and heating as a source of energy, that they become more and more energy efficient so that their gas supplies decrease at a lower rate, and therefore that they have sufficient gas to cover them for their production processes. Thank you very much for watching, and if your company struggles with volatile commodity energy or material prices, or even restrictions, get in touch and Silico can help you to optimize strategic business outcomes in as little as 4 weeks.